areas of work have included immigration levels, policy and planning, economic immigration modernization, the In Canada asylum system, and from 2017 to 2020, he was running Canada's migration program for Brazil as migration program manager at the Consulate General of Canada in Sao Paulo. James holds an honors BA from York University in political science and an MA in public administration from Carleton. And he is going to set the stage for us in the first 10 minutes of this webinar. Welcome. Thanks, James.
There, I think you can hear me now. Yes, thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be here and to be able to speak a little bit about the context, set it up a little bit ahead of the conversation with the panelists. I have a presentation that I will try to do very fast in the 10 minutes I have, and go from there. So here we are. Make sure I can share my screen. All right, so just an intro slide here, but what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the International Student Program Pathway, discuss a little how COVID-19 has affected our work in the last almost exactly a year since it started, speak a bit about the facilitation measures that we've put in place to assist international students during this pandemic, and then talk a bit about the planning horizon, what we have indicated the Government of Canada wishes to do in this year and into 2022 and 23. So very briefly, if we look at the student program and international students in time, it has become, students have grown significantly since 2015 to 2019. We use 19 as our benchmark because 2020 was quite an unusual year, but you can see the number of study permits grew quite significantly. Of these, many of the students that come to Canada are able to work and hold postgraduate work permits, and a growing number of international students also transition into permanent residence. If we look at that number, 58,520 in 2019 is quite a significant number out of a total of just around 350,000. So it is a pathway that is becoming more and more important as a transition pathway to permanent residence. If we look at the growth over time as well, we can see quite a significant expansion. It's been growing over time, but quite significantly since 2016. And the numbers are there. You can see that our levels plan has grown in time, and the contribution of students to that total has also grown quite significantly. And part of the explanation for that is that since early 2015, we have integrated students more directly into the permanent resident pathways that we have through the express entry system. Students who qualify, usually the time that they spend studying contributes positively towards the work experience that they need to be able to qualify under permanent residence streams. And as a result, more and more students are able to make that transition from the student life to work life to permanent residence in Canada. And the two major streams through which students come in are the provincial nominee program that is managed by the provincial and territorial governments, and then the Canadian Experience Class program launched in 2008, which looks at in Canada work experience, along with some elements of human capital, for example, high language achievement and graduation with a degree of a sufficient level in post-secondary education. Next slide. If we look at the impact of COVID-19. Obviously, we've had quite a hit in terms of the ability to travel to Canada. Volumes have decreased significantly, 95% down. Our permanent resident volumes as well were much lower because the ability to bring people from overseas was quite restricted. We've also implemented some restrictions with respect to temporary residents. And so the position has been to focus on only those who have a non-discretionary reason or non-optional reason to come to Canada. We've also been affected by stay-at-home orders within Canada. And our partners overseas have been also impacted by the current situation. I mentioned that I had been in Brazil for 3 years, and one of the very first things that happened with COVID was our visa application centers had to close, and our consulates for a period of time couldn't provide services. So this has had an impact on our ability to move and operate in a normal way in this period. But if we look at students, we've done quite a bit to enable students to continue to come to Canada. It took some time for that to be put in place, but it has worked quite effectively, we think. There are now many pathways and many ways for access. Most recently, on February 21st, some additional restrictions have come into play relating to testing and quarantine requirements. And of course, the 3-day stay at hotels that has become mandatory in order to pass the test that's required on arrival, as well as to continue that quarantine for the 14 days, for the total 14 days after leaving those facilities. So it is a situation that continues to impact our ability to operate in a normal environment, but there are some positive developments. Of course, we have vaccines now. We're hoping that will facilitate and enable us to deal with that situation in a more efficient way going forward. We don't have a timeline yet, but we hope that will be something that changes in the not too distant future. So if we look at facilitation measures for international students, this is probably a review for most of you, but by and large, international students are able to enter Canada when they have a plan in place, and that plan is linked to the designated learning institution and the province in which they are operating. For the most part, we believe that this has enabled the movement to perhaps not attain its previous level of volumes, but starting to approach it. They are, though, however, students continue to be subject to the testing and quarantine requirements for the most part. The only exception deals with students in the K-12 group who don't need to do the 3-day mandatory stay in a hotel. And we continue to look at how that policy can be adjusted to enable a more efficient movement of folks into the country. In terms of facilitative measures, the 2-stage processing for study permits was, I think, a big development in the fall of 2020. This was to enable the approval in principle of students who were overseas to be able to initiate that work with a view of being able to come to Canada eventually with a study permit. Of course, we continue to prioritize processing of study permit applications. Those are front of the line overall. And a lot of flexibility implemented with respect to the post-graduation work permit. This is obviously one of the highly sought documents for those who have studied and graduated, the ability to accumulate that work experience in Canada that will, if of sufficient level, enable them to then access the permanent residence stream and permanent residence in Canada. At the bottom here is the most recent development, which is the extension of the ability to obtain and have a valid work permit, even for those who may not have had a chance to arrive in Canada. And under this new change, the work experience will be counted even when the student isn't here yet, as long as they're able to come eventually and complete their studies here. So it is a change that is in the way of facilitation for international students, recognizing the importance and their contribution that they make to the economy and to the institutions and to the social and cultural richness of Canada. Talking a little bit about now the levels planning horizon, it's no surprise that 2020 was quite an unusual year. We were on a very sort of interesting growth trajectory, 2019 representing quite a high mark in terms of admissions, 341,000. Our hopes were to be able to continue along that trajectory in 2020, but we had a significant dip, about half as many as we normally had predicted to come. But the government plan tabled in Parliament in November of last year spoke about the future and a future of growth. So we hope and are working very hard today to recover and make up the gap that existed between 2019 and 2020 to the tune of 50,000 additional admissions in each of the next 3 years, including this year. So these are very ambitious goals. The idea is to get to 400,000 this year. And in that space, maintain a distribution that is been where we've been normally distributing our admissions between economic, 58%, family 26%, and humanitarian and protected classes 16%. This is a tall order. It is an ambitious plan, but it is the direction being sought by the government. And the idea is to try to attain and maintain an immigration target of about 1% of population per year. That is the goal going forward. So if we look at the future, we are not naive. We suspect that the challenges we face today with COVID-19 will continue to be with us for some time. We're looking forward to vaccinations helping to bring things to a more normal state of affairs, but it will take some time. And looking at the current year, and our minister has been very clear about looking at innovative ways to help to attain those highly ambitious targets. And one of those places we're looking at is the persons that are already in Canada, either as graduates or working in some capacity, and looking at how can we find ways to facilitate or expedite their transition from within Canada, in the hopes that borders will reopen and we'll be able to resume the movement from overseas once again. And last but not least, of course, the contribution that temporary residents who are either graduates or are working in Canada is very important. They're already engaged in the labor market. They're here, they're ready to start and support the economy as